Oh, I guess we're live. My one monitor 6 seconds behind. I guess we're on a delay in case Derek says something inappropriate.
Yes, I drop one of my famous four-letter F-bombs, Ford.
Yes. I heard totally off the cuff and nothing we discussed in the pre-show.
Oh, great.
And we're going to jump this right off to very adult content quickly. Maybe I shouldn't, but
are we doing the After Hours episode?
I don't know. I heard this on a podcast that is put out there and children and people listen to it. I'll even give her credit where I heard the joke is on the Kim Commando podcast. And she was talking about buying Fords. And the problem is, if you put a certain word in front of any Ford model, it really changes the whole aspect. Because we have the Ford Festiva, we have the Ford Focus, we have the Ford Probe, we have the Ford Edge. If you put the word anal in front of it, go through your list of Ford names and think of how exciting it could be. And as pointed out in her show, maybe that's why we don't have the Ford Taurus anymore, because it doesn't work.
Well, I mean, if you remember the Bob and Tom show and their old joke about the Taurus from Pinkley Motors.
Oh, I remember that one.
Yeah. Kind of along that line.
You say Bob and Tom. I've been listening to their podcast quite often lately. As a matter of fact, I even purchased, what do I want to say? Let me go. I even purchased the Valentine's present from IHateStevenSinger.com.
I don't follow that, so I have no idea what you're talking about, John.
I Hate Steven Singer has been a sponsor of the Bob and Tom show since like 1996.
Well, okay. I remember that name. I just don't know what you're talking about the Valentine's Day gift. I don't follow it.
Brandy's Valentine's Day gift from IHateStevenSinger.com.
Okay. We should probably move on to car talk.
Yeah, we probably should. Well, we started with car talk. I started talking about Fords.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. The four-letter F word that you're not supposed to say.
Yeah, and then I went to the four-letter A word we really aren't supposed to say.
Yeah.
Well, let me tap my papers because we've got Jon Stewart back on Comedy Central too.
I missed it. I got to catch up.
Watch it. It's on Paramount Plus and it's on YouTube.
Yeah.
And it'll be back on Monday nights.
That's the problem with having kids, John. Things happen. You wind up running late to things. You wind up not being able to, watch the TV shows you want to watch. So
start your podcasts on time.
Exactly.
That's okay. I had technical issues as soon as you arrived, so we both are guilty. I'm going to throw back to episode 331 that we did about 10 episodes ago, since we've kind of slowed down on the Daily Show, and there's some reasons we've done that, but not Jon Stewart's Daily Show.
Yeah, I was going to say clarify that because we just talked about Jon Stewart's Daily Show.
Our Daily Show. But we did the episode Don't Save the Manuals. And of course, I'm in the boat. Let's just get rid of the damn things. It's something to talk about, and I want to have them because this makes me the, purist, blah, blah, blah. And you get your horse and buggy. And what's I found interesting is that while they haven't referenced our show, but I've posted our links in a lot of the conversations, it's become like a point of topic or a conversation again that let's save the manuals. Manuals are better. I enjoy driving a manual. And I just like the way that sometimes we're on the cusp of the social media conversations.
I like to call it the cutting edge. And there's been a number of times that has happened. And you're throwing this out and I didn't have time to prepare and look back, but I recall many times when we have talked about topics on the show and within a week or two, Motor Trend runs an article about it, or, one of the other major magazine social media accounts, all of a sudden there's a topic, they've got an article out about something we talked about a couple weeks before. And So that's why everyone should listen to No Driving Gloves, because we're usually on that cutting edge.
And that's one of the reasons we're going back to this live stream. Of course, this is a test of the live stream. The normal live streams will be Thursday nights at 9:00, beginning officially on February 29th. We might do a surprise pop-up episode on the 22nd, but
we might.
We'll see how that all works into the thing, but we're doing a test show today just to see how the YouTube stream works. We're not going to Facebook, and I'm going to try to possibly even throw Instagram into there. So we'll see where we end up on what live streams and what channels. And I'm going to throw out something here. It's coming out of my own pocket. And I didn't tell Derek that I was going to do it, but I think I've mentioned it in the past. We've talked about you guys sharing the show. And we want to get a few more listeners to the show. We're trying to build up the audience, and that's why we've been experimenting with a few things over the last couple of months. And what I want to do is I'm going to ask you to share the show. If you like the show, share it on your social media and tag us. If you tag us, I'm going to note that you've tagged us. And once a month, we're going to do a randomized drawing, and I'm going to give you a $25 Amazon gift card. Just want to get you to share the show a little bit, and pay you a little bit to do it. It's a luck of the draw thing. Only American, unfortunately we can only offer this in America, USA, because of international issues in that. I talked to a podcaster this week that was trying to figure out how to ship his prize to Russia.
Oh, Lord.
Do you see what the issue there is? I pointed out that you might not want to do that. There's these things called sanctions right now.
And you don't want to visit from, the CIA or anybody like that. So,
Now, he even suggested, well, maybe I'll just send him the cash for the value of the prize.
Yeah.
That might even be worse than sending him the prize.
That's true. Yeah. So we're going to develop a tagline. And so I think it's going to be something to the effect of help us grow, share the show.
Oh, Derek's got it. Maybe that'll be his. Well, I can't say my tagline at the end of the show because then you'll think the show's over.
Yeah, we'll wait to the end.
And if you put Ford in front of it, it could really be funny. So, and the other little small topic before we dive into a main topic is this. There was a football game about a week ago. Might have been a week ago today, or was it a week ago? Yeah, it's a week ago today because they put it on a Sunday night for some stupid reason. A lot of absent car manufacturers. It used to be a big show where a lot of manufacturers would discuss their cars and have an advertisement for their cars. And I believe only Kia, General Motors, and Stellantis, maybe Toyota purchased a commercial. Yes, they're expensive in that, but they used to be cool. You introduced something fabulous, or you created this little micro movie. And I was just something that crossed my mind is this the beginning of the end? We talk a lot about how cars or everyday things are thought of as appliances. I mean, you get one refrigerator commercial during this football game, if you're lucky. So have cars just become appliances, and that's what we think of them now. When the manufacturers know when you want one or you're ready to buy one, you're going to go buy one. And there's no need to invest in a commercial in a show that is seen live by 140 plus million people, let alone the number of YouTube videos that go out about highlighting the advertising during this program, and the social media shares and the discussions. And 140 million people watch the show or this football game and then walk away. But the game's talked about, and just as often as the game's talked about, the commercials are talked about for the next few days. So you probably do get exposure to 300 million plus people. Why would you not advertise in there unless you just think of your product as a refrigerator and people are just going to come buy one when they need one.
Well, I'm going to say this, John, and of course, this is just kind of us shooting random topics off, but I have no idea where I saw the article, but there was an article put out, I think, just before that football game. And it was actually talking about how little the commercials actually help the companies that put them out. They spend a ton of money on those spots, and somebody, again, I don't remember what article it was where I found it, but there was discussion in it that they'd done studies, and it really doesn't help sales. It's just kind of get people to talk about you, but they really don't see increases from sales on a lot of those commercials. And so I almost wonder if the situation we're in right now in the auto industry, the fact that they probably looked at it and thought, the commercials probably aren't going to really elevate sales. All of that factored together just made the decision that, we don't really need to have a commercial in the big game.
See, I've read ads like that, and it goes back to me. It's kind of, I'm going to throw it to this podcast advertising. There's companies, big companies that are advertised on podcasts, and they buy a 3 or 6 month contract. And after a month or two, they don't see any results. So they back out of the deal. And then a month or two later, they're coming back going, hey, wait a second. The code is starting to be used. People are catching on. Maybe you don't see a bump in January or February. I guess this game was in February. But it's brand awareness. It keeps you focused. I mean, we still talk about Apple because of Apple in 1984. That's 40 years ago. And we talk about some of these ads that it's just a presence. It's a brand awareness. We talk about, Ford was absent from the Super Bowl, and they didn't support the Super Bowl, but General Motors was there. It seems odd. And then you can jump this to the pulling out of auto shows and bigger events that are around cars. It's just a interesting marketing thing. And as we've said, we want to focus interviews with people that are relevant to a topic. And this is a topic I would like to explore. So if you are out there as an ad agency or an advertising executive that has some opinion or knowledge on this more than just a couple of car people sitting around a microphone on a Sunday morning or Thursday night, shoot me a line, producer at nodrivinggloves.com. We'd like to talk to you. We'd like to analyze this a little bit more, I think.
We might know some people we can drag into this. We got this.
No, we know a lot of people. So we did throw out a topic. You want to enlighten us on why this topic came up, Derek, and the story behind it?
Is this the one we texted about, John?
Yes, this is the one that kind of slipped my mind.
Oh, okay, good. All right, so so we were talking, and as everybody knows, John and I, communicate infrequently between shows and topics, things like that, And John shot me over a message, probably a week or so ago, and wanted to know if we should talk about buying stock vehicles versus buying modified vehicles, because he ran across I believe it was a Facebook marketplace post, or maybe just a post on Facebook that was a gentleman was selling a C6 Grand Sport, stock Grand Sport. Okay. And one of the comments on the post was, quote, "This guy is nuts selling a stock C6 Grand Sport for $40,000. I can buy 1,000 horsepower modified Corvette for $50,000, close quote. So the topic question is really, where should we stand in this world of used cars, slightly used cars, whatever we want to talk about? Buying stock versus going out and buying a modified car. Where should people land on that? So,
Yeah,
I
because
think it's a good topic.
I replied to this guy that if history is anything, and especially with Corvettes, a stock Corvette, the rule used to be if you did $1,000 worth of a modification to a Corvette, you could take $1,000 off basically the NADA or whatever suggested retail price. Because modifying a Corvette, originality is the key. And we've seen it time and time again in the auctions. I mean, there's occasionally a modified car that goes through with that's been preserved or restored that, it's historically accurate modifications. But they never bring as much money as a stock Corvette. I mean, you could have the exception of like maybe the Corvette from Mark Harmon's movie Corvette Summer. That might bring a few bucks more. But there's a line in a James Dean song, all the Jag could see were my six tail lights. And he's talking about, a mid-year Corvette, 63 to 67, which a popular modification was six taillights. You put a additional pair of taillights on the car. When's the last time you saw a six taillight Corvette in the real world?
Are you asking the guy that lived 5 years as director of collections of the Corvette Museum, or just your average person?
I'm generally asking, but even the guy that lived his life around Corvettes for 5 years, how many were there? Numerous ones that you saw?
Surprisingly, there were quite a few out there, and there are guys that collect Corvettes that look for those cars and actually preserve them with the six taillights. There's the other group that gets them and takes the third taillight out each side, puts a fiberglass patch over and returns it back to, the standard two taillights. So it's kind of divided, and I never really saw that conversion affect the value of the mid-year Corvette too much. Now, the big one on mid-year Corvettes is whether or not the split window of the 63 was cut out and a 64 back glass put in. That's the big one. That is probably one of the main controversies around modifications of the C2 Corvette. So that one's a little more interesting, but I'm going to go back to the auctions that you brought up, John, because, for a long time, especially in the Corvette world, but I think in the automotive world in general, we did see, most modified cars didn't bring a lot of, as much value as an original stock restored or preserved car. And there are things to break down in that, like you said, a historic modified car, right? Because there's a lot of those out there that bring a lot of money, Von Dutch cars or Ed Roth cars, Big Daddy Ed Roth. Those are in a different classification. But I think there's been a turning point over the last few years, because even I think it was at Barrett Jackson in January out in Scottsdale, a mid-year Corvette that had been heavily modified. And we'll use the term that I don't think any of us on this show like, because we've brought out this resto mod classification of vehicles, which, if you haven't heard our discussion on that, John will tell you what show it was, because I don't have the show list in front of me.
Just about all of our shows.
Yeah, exactly. But I want to say it went for over $1 million. And part of that plays into the shop that builds it, right? So, we even think about our, former co-host, Will Posey, who's at Big Oak Garage and getting a lot of traction lately in his builds. his cars are going to wind up, in some cases in the future, I bet, going for more money than one of the stock versions that's been restored. So there's also that tipping point in the collector car world that I think we're seeing on modified cars versus stock, restored, preserved cars. It also, I think, goes to the level of the modifications, right? I mean,
Well,
if you're just throwing a turbocharger or a supercharger on something and, doing some minimum, wide body modifications, that's a lot different than a full on modified, resto mod, as some people call them.
well, that yeah, you're talking about the 67 Corvette custom convertible lot number 1367, I guess, at Barrett Jackson, went for $1.1 million.
That would be the one.
But the thing is the guy on the Facebook post who can spend 10 grand more and get this 1,000 horsepower Corvette, he's not getting it from Chip Foose. He's not getting it from Will Posey. He's not getting it from Troy Trepanier. He's not getting it from Von Dutch. He's getting it from the guy who built it in his Morton building in his backyard, and God only knows what the modifications are to it, and how it was done, and what the reliability is, and the safety and the quality. And that's kind of more of what I'm talking about. I would rather spend 40 grand on that stock Corvette and put another 10 grand into it to make it into that 1,000 horsepower vehicle, because then I know what the hell's been done to it. I'm not going to go spend 10 grand more on somebody else's mess. It's a completely abstract, but it's very similar. When I bought my 1980 Ford Courier, it was modified with a Buick 231 V6, turbocharged, all this other stuff, step side bed. It wasn't the greatest vehicle in the world, but man, that truck was a nightmare to have, because you didn't know what the hell was done to it, or even how to fix it. Or even my V8 Isuzu, I had somebody else build it for me, and then we had a falling out. So I had no idea. There was no wiring diagram. There was no, vacuum hose routing. There was nothing. You just had to learn it. And I think that's more what I'm talking about when we're buying modified vehicles and looking at, well, I could get 1,000 horsepower, or I could get this body kit, or I could get these wheels. I mean, there's certain things that, maybe it's worth paying a little bit more, because, you buy say a C6 Grand Sport with HRE wheels for $45,000 instead of 40, especially if the stock wheels are thrown in. That's a hell of a deal, because you can't buy a set of HREs for $5 grand. But the overall thing is, I think thinking that it's a better value to pay a little bit more for a modified car that's been modified by somebody who you cannot go back to, i.e. a reputable business, somebody who's been in existence for years and years and years and will actually acknowledge you. Just because this car, say we'll take a 5-liter Mustang, was built by this guy's buddy who has owned this repair shop for 40 years. That's one. Was that guy's buddy going to give you the same service that he gave the guy that had the car built? Probably not. If you have something built by a reputable builder, I mean, if you bought one of Will's creations, secondhand or third hand, I'm guessing he's the kind of guy that would go back and service it for you or help take care of it. But to say I'm going to pay a little bit more for this car because it has 1,000 horsepower, or like I said, body kit or certain things, I think is a mistake. It's always been a mistake to me. I learned my lesson with it. And it's one reason a lot of the stuff that I buy anymore is stock. It is not a modified vehicle, is because it's repairable and it's more easily repairable. Even going through restoration, take the Cunningham C3 Continental Coupe that I restored. When I got that car, when it was dropped off at the shop, it was unloaded. There was a car with wheels and that. It would roll around. Motor was in it, but everything else, all the trim pieces, all the interior, all the gauges, just dumped into the interior. And what was the hardest part of that car? You had to put the damn thing together before you took it apart to know what you were missing. So you did it, start restoring it, and then you go, well, I got to put this piece of trim on, or I got to put this in there. And then you go, wait a second, this doesn't quite work because the body work you did doesn't fit. And then you've got to order a piece or find a piece. Or in the Cunningham C3 that I did, it didn't come with a front seat. And we ended up finding another shop out of New England that was doing a C3. They shipped us front seats, and the metal worker at the restoration shop that I was at, Thayton Ogle, I think we both kind of know. I know Thayton. I think you kind of do.
We should get him on the show. He's a hoot.
And I don't think that'll happen. I won't be on that show. But,
oh, okay.
He was able to replicate that seat, but we needed to really have that seat before we did a lot of the floor work, or created the door panels, or figured out a lot of that. And that's the problem. You've got to have a starting point, and if you buy somebody else's project, that's why it's always 90% complete. I'm going to sell it. And then 5 years later, it's still 90% complete. And that person's going to sell it because they don't know where to start. They don't, it doesn't seem that far away. Again, I guess this goes back to, 90% done means 90% of the work still needs to be done. The last 10% of the job is 90% of the job. And I just don't, it's just one of those little statements that irritated me. And what I found amazing in this group, and it's a group that's called, I think, I Know What I Have. And because I know what I have, and I'm going to charge you this much money for it. And they were kind of insulting. Yeah, maybe $40K for a 06 Grand Sport with 20 some odd thousand miles is a little bit too much. But the comparison to say it's too much because I can buy this for a little bit more, you're not comparing apples to apples. It's like saying I can buy a bushel of apples for 40 grand, or I can buy a bushel of caramel apples for 40 grand.
Well, you definitely take the caramel apples. I mean, delicious.
I can't stand caramel apples. I want my stock. I want my stock apples. Damn it.
So wait, John, are you saying that it comes down also to personal preference?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay. I didn't know if that would figure in or not.
Some people, okay, we'll go back to the beginning of the show. Some people like very kinky things in the bedroom. Some people like very vanilla things in the bedroom. If you want to self-abuse yourself by getting a vehicle somebody else has played with, fine. If you want something that's straight out of the box, you know what you're getting, fine. What we say on here is my opinion, is your opinion, does not reflect any potential advertisers, listeners, or anything to do with, with the show. These are our opinions and our thoughts on the subject, which is a good thing to say, and probably should be a disclaimer, at least at the beginning of the show.
Somewhere, yeah. Beginning, middle, and end.
It's probably got to be at the beginning so somebody doesn't listen halfway through and go, wait a second.
That's why you do it beginning, middle, and end. That way, no matter where they come in, we got ourselves covered.
Yeah.
And, most of the time, John and I don't agree. So, I mean, that's one of the things that, makes the show so good.
Let me stay on the same track and ask this question. Well, same track, but different track.
Ooh, we're talking about
kind of a
trains
little
now.
junction. And this goes again to pricing cars and values. This question came to mind, and I didn't look at a lot of auction results. I didn't see what the average sale through rate in Arizona was. Do you know what that was offhand?
Nope. If you've learned one thing about me, John, I don't really pay attention to the auctions. Not as much as I should, I guess.
Well, they don't auction the kind of stuff you're into anymore.
Yeah, most of them don't. There's a few good ones coming up. I don't have the money to buy anything, but
Let's see here,
I'll watch.
97% in 2020. This was a prediction article. I don't want a prediction.
This is the cool thing about being live streaming again.
Yes.
You get to see us do the research.
Well, sometimes the research just pops up.
Exactly.
Now, Barrett Jackson,
know what we're going to talk about.
Say Barrett Jackson has 100% sell-through rate because they don't do reserves.
Yeah, exactly.
For some reason, all this here.
Weren't you saying you were trying to look up the average?
Yeah, I was trying to look at the average of all of them because 100% for Barrett Jackson doesn't work for me.
Right.
And I obviously, because it's always a big number, or it's always a number that's heavily highlighted.
Except for the 1 year that you want.
Except the year that you don't want to look it up, which probably lends to what I want to say. Let's see here. The Arizona auctions concluded Sunday after 2,724 cars were offered over 7 days to the tune of $244.8 million. The dollar amount exceeded the 2023 figure. And 2,375 cars sold. So it's is that like an 80%, 85% sell-through rate?
I think so.
Which is down. And that's what my question is. We had these years, 2020, 2021, possibly even into 2022, where we had these massive car values, exceptional car values. And now the sales have decreased a little bit. Even though the dollar figures might be up a little bit, is it because these people that bought at the height of the market can't afford to sell because they paid too much 2 years ago? And the question is, are we artificially inflating the value of collector cars right now because the only things selling are the people that either can afford to take the loss or the people that are actually making back kind of what they overpaid during the pandemic?
I think you know my opinion on this, John. But my opinion for many years, not just this year or the recent, say, 2 to 3 years, has been that there are certain companies out there, both in the auction world and other sectors of the antique and collectible car world, that have been inflating the value of collector cars for many, many, many years for personal gain. I think we've talked about this on many previous shows. There's different areas of the collector car world, and one of those is that it has become a purely business relationship for certain people. And although they may have started out with a passion for automobiles and still have car collections, they don't look at them the same as most of the collector car world. And they're solely in it for the money, inflating the value of the car and selling it at a gain to them from what they paid on it. And there are companies out there that are trying very hard to take over a lot of sectors of the collector car community to make that even easier.
What you said, we've touched on, we've never dove into it on the show. And I do want to dive into it on the show. But one of the things in researching that potential show, or I guess watching, a lot of these key figureheads, I'll say, are no longer the people in charge. They have done their cash out, to put it in dirty terms. They cashed out. Nothing wrong with that. I mean, I think, unfortunately, that's the nature of capitalism, and there's nothing wrong with capitalism. But these figureheads that are still, their names are attached to these companies. The companies are no longer them. The companies are shareholders. And if anything we know as capitalist Americans is, it doesn't matter as long as this year's numbers are better than last year's numbers. And I have heard that some of these shareholders are questioning why some of these businesses are in these. I know what word I want to use. There's just not a chance in the hell I'm going to pronounce it correctly. These extra businesses that they have, or these sideshow businesses they have, why do they have them? They serve, to them, no purpose. Because again, it's the investors who understand nothing about the product of the company that they're investing in, but all they understand is greater than and less than. And we could get into a whole conversation about that in all kinds of industries. But part of what I guess to sum up what I'm saying is the figureheads and the people whose names that are attached to these businesses, why we want to say, so-and-so, why are they buying all this? Why are they doing all of this? Well, they do all the acquisition to increase the portfolio, to sell the business or make the business go public. And then the shareholders buy in and then start running the company and start questioning why some of the actions took place. So it's a complicated thing, but yes, when it really comes down to it, there are a lot of people in the collector car industry that are doing things that are ethically incorrect, if you really, really dove into it. And if the collector car hobby was regulated as close as other hobbies, I think. Do you understand or follow?
I agree. I agree. So and again, although maybe some of us in the field, because I think we have to understand that there's different sectors to this hobby, profession, all of that, right? So to some people, this, the collector car world, the antique car world, is a hobby, right? You have your cars, you go to work every day. It's not connected to the auto industry. You come home, but you love cars. So you have one or two, and you like driving around, going out, going to some shows, doing that stuff. So, there is the hobby part of this, but then there's the various professions within the collector car world. And, there are businesses within this, right? There's as John says,
Please don't call me
there's
Jeff. Any other name in the
I
world
don't
other
know
than
how
Jeff.
that too many words trying to come out at one time. But there's various businesses. I mean, there's restoration shops, there's, maintenance, just mechanical upkeep of sports, collector cars, uh, all the way up to the big businesses that, the auction houses, the insurance companies, the various different sectors of this. It does become part of, capitalism within America, and there are businesses around it. And I don't think John or I are saying that's a bad thing, because we basically both work within the profession that has developed around antique and collector cars, both having been in the museum field for a long time, both delving into the restoration worlds. and things like that. So, but what it comes down to, at least for me, is honesty and ethics within what you're doing. And as John says, yes, it's part of capitalism, and good for some of those people that have made a great business out of collector cars and have made a decent living out of it and made money out of it. But when you cross the borderline into doing things unethically or solely for the idea of, oh, we can make the profit and loss sheets look better and better year after year, and we can make more money by manipulating this end of the collector car world to be able to make this end of it that we're in make more money. That's when things get just a little too out of sorts for me, and that's just my ethical belief in how you should operate a business, or be involved in something. Like, I don't you know in some cases, some of these companies and businesses are going to do more damage to the collector car hobby by doing some of the things they're doing than doing good for the hobby and the profession.
Now, there's a lot of fingers, and I could expand a lot more on that, but I don't want to go down that rabbit hole today.
Yeah, I don't think we're
It
prepared for
definitely
that
needs to
rabbit
be
hole.
a probably thought out, well researched, and semi scripted episode. I hate saying that, but there's so much danger. Have to have your errors and omissions insurance policies and stuff in place just in case you slip and say something wrong, because it's almost impossible to talk about this without saying names. But it's going to have to be done without saying names, but people will know. People will know the names. I believe even a fairly famous podcaster, automotive podcaster that I've talked to recently, hit one of his ads previously on his show was about his car insurance company and how he left a different car insurance company because he was questioning whether or not they were a car insurance company. And that's a paid host read ad on another podcast. So I think I can say that. But what else do we want to talk about? Let's get this fun again, Derek. Let's talk about collector cars. You doing anything cool in your shop or anything with your toys?
I'm pardon me. I am still recovering from that bout of bronchitis at the beginning of the year. It is ridiculous.
Nothing better than going out in the garage and grinding some metal.
Well, yeah, that's true. I actually did that a couple of weeks ago, surprisingly. So no, I'm trying to get, over the winter time here, we focused on some of the house projects, so not a lot of time out in the shop. So I'm starting now. It's warming up, getting back out to the shop, getting things set up. And for many reasons we will be discussing on the show in the near future. But getting things set up, getting some stuff moved around, trying to get to work on breathing life back into the cars for this, season, let's call it. So they've been sitting over the winter. A couple of them need some work, got to get things back ready to get on the road. So getting ready to dive into all of that. And also, as John and I have talked about, and John well knows, some of the things that are coming up that, again, we'll be discussing on the podcast in the near future. Hopefully within the next month or so, the studio or the area I podcast from will look a little different. Maybe there won't be a brick wall and one of my wife's lovely paintings that she acquired hanging behind me, but rather a more appropriate no driving gloves background behind me. So trying to get a newer studio set up as well during this out in the shop. So I'm trying to do a lot, John. That's what I'm trying to say.
I know the feeling. I'm doing a lot. I play with these fake backgrounds. I don't know how my studio is going to develop for the background. I bought some cool stuff to hang on the wall and stuff behind. A lot of stuff there. I bought some cool things to hang on the wall, try to maybe make this a little bit more appropriate. And like Derek said, we're going to make some announcements about our personal lives and the show going forward. We believe No Driving Gloves is going to be here. We really like the idea of going back live as we pre-announce the shows, and that it's great to have everybody in the studio with us. I'm even contemplating that, as you share out, like I said, you share and tag us, just take No Driving Gloves and whenever you share these shows, your name will get entered into a hat for what do I want to say? That Amazon gift card. Or maybe we'll even give you a chance to get a No Driving Gloves coffee mug.
Hey, John, I got one of those.
Yeah. Yours comes up better because you don't use this fake background that wants to delete the mug because it's not.
Yeah. So I'll show mine. That way everybody can actually see what it looks like.
Yeah. And we'll give you a choice between the gift card and the mug. And I'm also thinking that, maybe we'll go ahead and start randomly selecting people that are on our mailing list. And the mailing list link will be on the website to appear on the show. We'll just say, hey, we're recording tonight, Thursday night, such and such a time. You want to be on the show? Here's the link. Show up if you want. And actually get you on here doing some live commentary, throwing a wrench into things.
Oh, John, you know what? Wait, you know what we should do? You know what we should do? Let's take our mailing list. Okay, when I get the new studio set up in the garage, out in the shop, we'll put the mailing list on a big dartboard, and then we can literally I can just throw a wrench at the dartboard and see whose address it hits, and that's who we have on the show.
Oh, I thought you were going to say that when you get it all set up, we would pick somebody and you would fly them to your studio and they could hang out with you and do the show.
As long as the No Driving Gloves business checking account has the money in it, we can do that. And if I remember right, you're in charge of that checking account. So
yeah, it was, you can send a infusion into the company and but so right now we're just doing mugs, video guest spots, and looking forward to this live show. We want you to share it. You said you tag us in it. We might even reshare your share, but you'll be entered into a contest to get a couple of bucks for watching us. We really want to grow listeners. We really want to, since we seem to talk about a lot of these topics in advance that end up showing up in the automotive world, we really want to be there for you. And we really want people to know we were first. I'll be honest. I'm conceited like that.
Yes, you are. Yeah, we all know that.
Yes, there's no doubt about it. I may or may not have another podcast on that.
Yeah.
But we've got some announcements coming up. Like I said, we're going to do a test live stream on November 22nd. Most likely. Watch for the pre-announcements on social media. And
hang on a second. What day did you just say, John?
Is it November? I said November. How about February 22nd?
How about February? I got to pull a calendar up here.
Yeah, February.
Yeah, 20th. How about February 22nd? Yeah.
I thought you were questioning my November.
I was. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So test show the 22nd, maybe another pop-up on the 25th because we're going to record then. And then balls to the wall on the
leap
29th.
day. We're going to, what we're saying is we're going to leap right into this.
Yes. I was trying to think of another word for leap year, but I don't know. But I know Puxtatani Phil, saw a shadow. And the reason he did that is so he could go back down into his hole and watch No Driving Gloves for the next 4 years.
Exactly.
Something like that. That could be cruelty to animals. Anything to wrap it up, Derek, or I'm going to scoot it on down the road.
Well, is it too many taglines if we both do something at the end? Because if I'm like, don't forget, help us grow, share the show. But then
well, maybe we could just randomly one of us do one at the end.
That's a good idea. Alternate it.
Right.
Yeah.
Or we could end up wrapping it up into the close, but I don't know. But like you said, help us grow, share the show, or do we want to get off our ass, burn some gas? Either way, I'm out.